The gunshot echoed through the parking lot like thunder splitting open the night sky. Mia Chen's body crumpled to the asphalt, her white dress blooming crimson as blood pooled beneath her. Derek Matthews screamed, a guttural, primal sound that tore through his throat as he clutched his stomach, feeling warmth seep between his fingers. Another shot, then another. The security camera mounted on Building C captured every frame. The muzzle flash, the shell casings bouncing across concrete, the shooter's face illuminated under the parking lot lights. All of this horror, all of this irreversible devastation, over a parking space. Mia Chen was 24 years old. She had cheekbones that photographers called architectural and eyes that could sell anything from luxury watches to sustainable fashion lines. Her Instagram had 63,000 followers. Her agency had just booked her for New York Fashion Week. She practiced her runway walk in their apartment hallway, laughing when she stumbled, making Derek time her with his phone stopwatch. She drank chai lattes with oat milk. She volunteered at animal shelters every Sunday. She called her mother every single day without fail at 7 in the morning. Derek Matthews was 26, a graphic designer who'd landed his dream job at a tech startup just 3 months earlier. He proposed to Mia on a hiking trail overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the ring tucked inside a sandwich bag because he was terrified of dropping it. She said yes before he finished his rehearsed speech. They'd been planning a small wedding for October, just family and close friends, somewhere with string lights and wildflowers. They'd moved into Parkside Garden Apartments together 6 weeks before the shooting, combining their furniture, arguing playfully about whose couch was more comfortable, painting the bedroom walls a soft sage green that Mia picked out after scrolling through Pinterest for hours. Their life was just beginning. Every morning felt like unwrapping a gift. Every plan they made stretched into a future they believed was guaranteed. If you value justice for innocent lives, subscribe so stories like Mia's never get forgotten. Those who don't subscribe, ask yourself why you'd let her story fade into silence. March 15th, 2023, 7:47 p.m. The timestamp would later be pulled from Derek's phone records, from the text message he sent to Parkside Gardens Property Management. Someone is in our assigned spot again. Spot 247. Can you please handle this? We've been circling for 15 minutes. They'd driven to Bella Vista, their favorite Italian restaurant, to celebrate Mia booking a campaign with a major athletic wear brand. She'd ordered the mushroom risotto. He'd gotten the carbonara. They'd shared a tiramisu, feeding each other bites across the table like the couple in love that they were. The drive home took 23 minutes. They were listening to a playlist Mia made called Our Forever, a collection of songs from every significant moment in their relationship. When they pulled into Parkside Garden Apartments, their assigned spot, 247, clearly marked with white paint and their apartment number, was occupied by a silver Honda Civic. Derek's jaw tightened. This was the 4th time in 2 weeks. He'd filed 2 formal complaints with management. Both times he'd received the same generic email. We're addressing the situation with all residents. Mia touched his hand. Just park in visitor parking. We'll deal with it tomorrow. But Derek was tired. Tired of being considerate. Tired of rule followers getting punished while rule breakers faced no consequences. He parked in the visitor spot, and they walked toward the building entrance. That's when they saw him. Marcus Webb, emerging from the stairwell, keys in hand, walking toward the silver Honda Civic. "Hey," Derek called out. "That's our spot you're parked in." Marcus turned. He was 41 years old, stocky build, wearing a faded black t-shirt and jeans. His face was blank, not apologetic, not defensive, just blank. "I didn't see your name on it." "It says 247, Derek said, keeping his voice level. "That's our apartment number. It's assigned parking." "I've lived here 3 years, Marcus said. "I park where there's space." Mia stepped forward, her voice gentle. "We're not trying to start anything. We just need our spot. We paid for it in our lease." "You new residents think you own everything," Marcus muttered. Derek felt heat crawl up his neck. "We're asking nicely. Can you please not park there again?" "Or what?" Marcus took 2 steps closer, close enough that Derek could smell cigarette smoke on his clothes. "Or we'll keep reporting it to management," Mia said, her hand finding Derek's arm, trying to de-escalate. Marcus's eyes fixed on her. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe, or something darker. "You're that model girl. I've seen you around." The way he said it made Derek's skin prickle. "Just move your car tomorrow, man," Derek said, pulling Mia toward the building. "Please." Marcus didn't respond. He stood there, watching them walk away, his hands curling into fists at his sides. Mrs. Patterson in apartment 312 watched the exchange from her balcony. She'd later tell police she almost called security that night because the look on that man's face wasn't right. Mr. Yoshida in apartment 289 heard the raised voices while taking out his trash. He'd tell investigators he recognized Marcus Webb's voice. He'd heard it before, during other parking lot arguments, always escalating, always aggressive. Marcus Webb had lived at Parkside Garden Apartments for 3 years and 2 months. In that time, management had received complaints about him from 7 different residents. 3 incidents involved parking disputes that turned into screaming matches. One involved him pounding on a neighbor's door at midnight, accusing them of making too much noise. Another involved him verbally assaulting a maintenance worker who'd allegedly blocked his vehicle while making repairs. In 2019, he'd been court-ordered to attend anger management classes after a domestic violence report filed by an ex-girlfriend. She dropped the charges after 2 weeks. The case disappeared into the system. Nobody connected the dots. Nobody flagged the pattern. Nobody intervened. Derek and Mia entered their apartment at 8:11 p.m. Mia kicked off her heels and went to the kitchen to make chamomile tea. Derek collapsed on the couch, scrolling through his phone, trying to shake off the tension that still gripped his shoulders. They talked about the confrontation, deciding they'd send another email to management in the morning, maybe request a meeting with the property manager. They agreed to let it go for tonight. At 8:19 p.m., Derek went to their bedroom to change into sweatpants. Through the window, he saw Marcus Webb's Honda Civic still parked in their spot. He saw Marcus himself standing beside the car, phone pressed to his ear, pacing. At 8:21 p.m., Marcus ended his call and walked toward Building D, where his apartment was located. At 8:23 p.m., Marcus emerged again. This time, he was holding a Glock 19. Derek was stepping out of the apartment building's front entrance, heading back to his car to grab his work laptop from the trunk. Mia followed him, wanting to get the shopping bag they'd left in the back seat. The evening air was cool. Security lights cast long shadows across the parking lot. Somewhere nearby, someone was grilling. The smell of charcoal and smoke drifted on the breeze. Marcus walked toward them with purpose. No hesitation, no warning. His right arm extended, the gun gripped in both hands. Derek saw him, saw the weapon. His brain couldn't process it fast enough. "Mia, run!" The first shot hit Mia in the chest. Center mass. She gasped, a small, surprised sound, and staggered backward. Derek lunged forward, trying to shield her, trying to position his body between her and the gun. The second shot tore through his abdomen just above his hip. Pain exploded through him, white-hot and all-consuming. He collapsed onto Mia, covering her, his hands pressing against her wound even as blood poured from his own. Marcus fired again, and again, and again. 5 more rounds. 2 struck the car behind them. 1 hit the concrete, 1 grazed Derek's shoulder, 1 missed entirely. Shell casings bounced across the asphalt, glinting under the lights like scattered coins. Marcus lowered the gun, looked at what he'd done, looked at Mia's body, motionless beneath Derek's. Looked at Derek, who was screaming her name, begging her to stay awake, pressing his hands against the hole in her chest where life was draining out faster than he could comprehend. Then Marcus turned, walked to his Honda Civic, got in. drove away. The security camera captured everything, every shot, every second. The timestamp would later be used to establish the exact timeline: 8:23:47 p.m. to 8:24:02 p.m. 15 seconds. That's how long it took to end Mia Chen's life. The 911 calls started flooding in at 8:24 p.m. 7 different residents called within 90 seconds. Mrs. Patterson from apartment 312. "There's been a shooting in the parking lot. I saw it. He shot them. Oh my God, he shot them." Mr. Yoshida from apartment 289. "Send ambulances now. 2 people down. I think they're dead." A trembling voice from apartment 156. "There's so much blood. Please hurry, please." Derek stayed conscious through all of it. He held Mia, whispering to her, promising her she'd be okay, telling her to hold on, telling her he loved her, telling her about their wedding, about the honeymoon they'd planned to Santorini, about the kids they'd talked about having someday. Her eyes were open but unfocused. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Blood soaked through his shirt, hers and his mixing together, warm and sticky. Paramedics arrived at 8:30 p.m. 6 minutes. 6 minutes of Derek holding her. 6 minutes of neighbors gathering, watching, crying, some filming on their phones, some praying out loud. 6 minutes of Derek feeling her pulse under his fingertips, feeling it slow, feeling it weaken, feeling it stop. They pronounced Mia dead at the scene. 8:34 p.m. They loaded Derek onto a stretcher. He fought them, screaming, refusing to let go of her hand. It took 3 paramedics to pry his fingers loose. His blood pressure was crashing. His abdomen was filling with internal bleeding. They rushed him to Metro General Hospital, lights and sirens cutting through the night. At 9:02 p.m., Mia's mother received a phone call from a police officer. The words didn't make sense at first. Shooting, daughter, deceased. She collapsed. The phone clattered to the floor. Mia's father picked it up, listened to the officer repeat the information, and felt his entire world implode. At 9:15 p.m., Derek's parents received a similar call. Their son had been shot. He was in emergency surgery. It was touch and go. They needed to get to the hospital immediately. Both sets of parents arrived within the hour. They met in the hospital waiting room. 2 families bound together by violence they couldn't comprehend, by grief too massive to contain. Mia's mother wailed, a sound that echoed through the hallways, a sound that nurses would later say haunted them for weeks. Derek's father sat with his head in his hands, shoulders shaking. They waited together while surgeons worked to save Derek's life. The surgery lasted 4 hours. A perforated intestine, a nicked kidney, massive blood loss. They gave him 6 units. They repaired what they could. At 1:47 a.m., a surgeon emerged, still in blood-stained scrubs, and told Derek's parents their son would survive. Barely. But he would survive. Subscribe if you believe Derek deserves to see justice while he recovers. If you scroll past without subscribing, remember, apathy is how killers walk free. While Derek fought for his life in surgery, police were hunting for Marcus Webb. At 8:28 p.m., 4 minutes after the shooting, dispatch issued a BOLO. Be on the lookout for a silver Honda Civic, license plate 7KJM439, registered to Marcus Webb. Armed and dangerous. Approach with extreme caution. Officers flooded the area within minutes. They cordoned off Parkside Garden Apartments. They secured the crime scene. They collected shell casings, photographed blood spatter patterns, retrieved security footage from 4 different cameras positioned throughout the complex. Detective Sarah Reeves caught the case. 22 years on the force, 15 in homicide. She arrived at the scene at 8:51 p.m. and immediately requested Marcus Webb's background information. What came back made her stomach turn. Marcus Webb, age 41. Born in Sacramento. Dropped out of community college. Worked a series of warehouse jobs, never staying anywhere longer than 18 months. concealed carry permit issued in 2020, a legal gun owner. Court-ordered anger management in 2019 following a domestic violence incident. Charges dropped when the victim recanted. No criminal convictions on his record. But complaints. So many complaints. From employers about workplace outbursts. From landlords about disputes with neighbors. From an ex-wife who'd filed a restraining order in 2017, claiming he'd threatened to make her disappear. The restraining order expired. The complaints remained scattered across different jurisdictions, different databases. Nobody synthesized the information. Nobody recognized the escalating pattern of violence. Detective Reeves pulled traffic camera footage from every intersection within a 5-mile radius. At 8:26 p.m., Marcus's Honda Civic appeared on a camera at the intersection of Maple and 7th Street heading east. At 8:34 p.m., it appeared again on Highway 101 moving north. At 8:52 p.m., it exited the highway near Riverside County. "He's running," Detective Reeves told her partner. "Get units moving north. Check family addresses. Where would he go?" Marcus Webb's sister, Jennifer Webb Hartley, lived in Riverside, exactly 47 miles from Parkside Garden Apartments. Police obtained her address at 9:15 p.m. At 9:40 p.m., 3 patrol units surrounded her house, a modest single-story home with a chain-link fence and children's toys scattered across the front yard. Jennifer answered the door in her pajamas, confusion and fear written across her face. "What's happening? What did he do?" "Is your brother Marcus here?" an officer asked. She hesitated. That hesitation told them everything. They found Marcus in the garage, sitting on a folding chair, the Glock 19 resting on a workbench beside him. He didn't resist, didn't run, didn't reach for the weapon. He simply raised his hands and said, "I knew you'd come." Time of arrest, 10:03 p.m., 14 hours and 39 minutes after he murdered Mia Chen. The investigation moved with brutal efficiency. Detective Reeves had seen countless homicides in her career, but few came with such overwhelming evidence. The security footage alone was damning. 4 different angles capturing Marcus walking toward Mia and Derek, gun extended, firing repeatedly. No provocation, no visible threat from the victims, just cold, calculated violence. Ballistics analysis confirmed the Glock 19 recovered from Jennifer's garage fired all 9 rounds found at the scene. Gunpowder residue tests on Marcus's hands and clothing came back positive. His fingerprints were on the shell casings. His DNA was on the weapon grip. But Detective Reeves dug deeper. She always did. And what she found made the case even darker. Marcus Webb's phone records revealed obsessive behavior. In the 2 weeks leading up to the shooting, he'd searched Mia's name on Google 37 times. He'd visited her Instagram profile over 200 times. The app's data logs provided exact timestamps. He'd saved screenshots of her modeling photos, organizing them in a folder on his computer labeled MC. 218 images. Some screenshots included comments from her followers. Some were zoomed in on her face. Detective Reeves interviewed Marcus's sister. Jennifer sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a coffee mug, tears streaming down her face. "He called me that morning," she whispered. "March 15th, around 10 a.m. He said he'd been having trouble sleeping. Said there were people in his building who didn't respect him. I told him to just ignore it, to focus on work. He said..." She paused, swallowing hard. "He said, 'I've been waiting for a reason.' I didn't know what he meant. I thought he meant a reason to move out, to find a new place." "Did you ask him to clarify?" Detective Reeves asked gently. "No. I was getting my kids ready for school. I just said, 'Okay, Marcus, call me later,' and hung up." She broke down completely. "I could have stopped it. If I'd just asked what he meant, if I'd just listened." Detective Reeves placed a hand on Jennifer's shoulder. "This isn't your fault. You couldn't have known." But could she have? Could anyone have? The warning signs were there, scattered like breadcrumbs through Marcus Webb's history. Each incident, each complaint, Each escalation, they built a portrait of a man spiraling toward violence. But nobody assembled the portrait. Nobody intervened. Witness interviews painted a clearer picture. Mrs. Patterson from apartment 3-12 told detectives about an incident 3 months earlier when Marcus had confronted Mia in the building's mailroom. He asked her if she was a model. She said yes, politely, and tried to leave. He kept talking, asking about her work, where she shoots, if she has an agent. She was clearly uncomfortable. I was standing right there collecting my mail, and even I felt uncomfortable for her. Mr. Yoshida described an incident from 6 weeks prior. I saw him watching her from his balcony. She was coming home from a run, wearing workout clothes. He was just standing there, staring. When she looked up and saw him, he didn't look away. He just kept staring. It was creepy. Building management records revealed Marcus had applied for a job at Prestige Models, Mia's agency, 6 months before the shooting. The application listed his work history, warehouse positions, inventory management, no relevant experience for a modeling agency. He was not contacted for an interview. 2 weeks before the shooting, Marcus posted in the Parkside Garden Apartments residents group chat. New people moving in think they own the place. Someone needs to teach them respect. Another resident responded, "Dude, relax, it's just parking." Marcus replied, "You'll see what happens when nobody respects boundaries." Nobody reported it. The messages disappeared into the endless scroll of group chat complaints and announcements. Derek woke from his third surgery on March 18th, 3 days after the shooting. His mother was sitting beside his hospital bed, holding his hand, whispering prayers. When his eyes opened, her face crumpled with relief. "You're okay, baby. You're okay." His voice came out raspy, barely a whisper. "Mia?" The silence that followed told him everything. His mother's expression, the way she gripped his hand tighter, the way tears spilled down her cheeks. "No," he said. "No, no, no." "I'm so sorry, Derek." He screamed. A nurse rushed in. They sedated him. He woke hours later to the same devastating reality. Mia was gone. The woman he was supposed to marry in October. The woman who made him laugh every single day. The woman who'd been planning their life together. Kids and mortgages and growing old. Gone. Because of a parking space. Because a man decided his convenience mattered more than her life. On March 22nd, police came to Derek's hospital room with a recording device. He gave his statement from his ICU bed, his voice breaking, his hands shaking. He described the argument in the parking lot, Marcus's blank expression, the way he'd said, "You're that model girl." The moment he saw the gun, the sound of the first shot, trying to shield Mia, holding her while she died. He didn't say anything, Derek told Detective Reeves. He just shot her. She didn't even have time to be scared. When Marcus Webb was interrogated, he showed no remorse. He sat in the interview room, arms crossed, face expressionless. "They disrespected me," he said simply. "I told them not to cause problems. They kept pushing." "You shot an unarmed woman," Detective Reeves said, her voice tight with controlled fury. "Over a parking space. She should have minded her business. She lived there. It was her parking space. I've lived there longer." The interview lasted 2 hours. Marcus never wavered. Never showed emotion, never expressed regret. Forensic psychologists would later describe him as a textbook case of narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial features. Someone who viewed other people not as humans with inherent value, but as obstacles or objects. Someone who'd been building toward explosive violence for years. The trial began on November 7th, 2023. 8 months after Mia's murder. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. Security footage, ballistics reports, witness testimonies, digital forensics showing Marcus's obsessive behavior, phone records, the recovered weapon. The defense attempted to argue heat of passion, claiming Marcus had been provoked by the confrontation, that he'd acted in a moment of uncontrollable rage. The prosecution destroyed that argument in minutes. They showed the 4-minute gap between the initial confrontation and the shooting. 4 minutes when Marcus went to his apartment, retrieved his weapon, loaded it, returned to the parking lot, and executed Mia Chen. That wasn't heat of passion. That was premeditation. Derek testified on the 4th day of the trial. He walked into the courtroom using a cane, his body still recovering from 3 surgeries, a 4th scheduled for the following month. He took the witness stand and told his story. The jury cried. The gallery cried. The judge maintained composure, but her eyes glistened. Mia's mother testified. She talked about her daughter's dreams, her kindness, her plans for the future. She talked about planning a funeral instead of a wedding. She talked about the hole in her chest that would never heal. On November 15th, after 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict. Guilty. First-degree murder, attempted murder, multiple weapons charges. The courtroom erupted. Mia's mother sobbed. Derek dropped his head into his hands. Marcus Webb showed no reaction. He simply stared straight ahead, as blank and emotionless as he'd been the moment he pulled the trigger. Sentencing came 3 weeks later. Life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 25 years to run consecutively for the attempted murder of Derek Matthews. Marcus would die in prison. He would never walk free. He would never feel sunshine on his face without bars casting shadows. He would never know a moment's peace. Judge Catherine Monroe delivered the sentence and then did something unusual. She addressed Marcus directly. You stole a life of immeasurable value over something so trivial it defies comprehension. You didn't just kill Mia Chen. You killed every moment she would have experienced, every laugh, every milestone, every ordinary Tuesday morning. You killed the future she and Derek were building. You killed the grandchildren Mia's parents will never meet. The scope of your destruction extends far beyond that parking lot. I hope every remaining day of your life is filled with the awareness of what you took from this world. Marcus Webb showed no reaction. If this verdict matters to you, subscribe. Because the only way these stories create change is if people like you refuse to look away. Those who won't subscribe, comment below and explain why Mia's life isn't worth a single click. But the story didn't end with the verdict. It never does in cases like this. Justice in a courtroom doesn't resurrect the dead. It doesn't heal wounds. It doesn't answer the question that haunted everyone involved. Could this have been prevented? 3 months after the trial, Detective Reeves was reviewing the case file, something she did obsessively, even after closure, looking for lessons to carry into future investigations. She discovered something that made her blood run cold. Marcus Webb's computer, seized during the execution of the search warrant, contained more than screenshots of Mia's Instagram. Buried in a folder labeled Work Docs were drafts of an email he'd never sent. The email was addressed to Prestige Models, Mia's agency. It read, "You rejected my application 6 months ago. You didn't even give me an interview. Now one of your girls lives in my building. Funny how things work out." The email was dated February 28, 2023. 2 weeks before the shooting. Detective Reeves immediately contacted Prestige Models. They pulled their records. Confirmed Marcus Webb had applied for a position in building maintenance in September 2022. Confirmed he'd been rejected. They'd received over 50 applications for a single position, and his resume showed no relevant experience. They'd sent an automated rejection email. Standard procedure. But to Marcus, it wasn't standard. It was personal. He'd fixated on Mia not just because she was beautiful, not just because she was new to the building, but because she represented the agency that had rejected him. She became the embodiment of every perceived slight, every failure, every moment when the world didn't give him what he believed he deserved. This wasn't a parking dispute that escalated into violence. This was premeditated murder disguised as a spontaneous act. Marcus had been waiting for an excuse. The parking space simply provided it. When this information became public, it sparked outrage. Mia's family filed a civil lawsuit against Parkside Garden Apartments, alleging negligence. The lawsuit cited the documented history of complaints against Marcus, the lack of intervention, the failure to recognize escalating threats. The case settled out of court for an undisclosed amount, rumored to be in the millions, with the property management company admitting no wrongdoing but agreeing to implement new safety protocols. But there was another twist, one nobody saw coming. Jennifer Webb Hartley, Marcus's sister, came forward 6 months after the trial. She contacted Derek directly, asking to meet. He agreed, against the advice of his therapist and his attorney. They met at a coffee shop, neutral territory, with Derek's father present for support. Jennifer's hands shook as she spoke. "I need you to know something. The morning of the shooting, when Marcus called me, he didn't just say, 'I've been waiting for a reason.' He said something else. He said, 'I know how to make people disappear.' I didn't register it at the time. I was distracted. But I heard it. And I did nothing." Derek sat across from her, processing this revelation. "Why are you telling me now?" "Because I can't sleep. Because every time I close my eyes, I see your fiancé's face in the news. Because I could have saved her life with a single phone call and I didn't make it. Because even though he's in prison, even though he got what he deserved, I need you to know that I failed you both. And I have to live with that forever." Derek didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to rage at her, to blame her, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain he carried every day. But another part, the part that Mia would have embodied, understood that Jennifer was another victim of Marcus's violence. Not in the same way, not with the same devastating consequences, but a victim nonetheless. "I don't forgive you," Derek said quietly. "I don't know if I ever can. But I believe you didn't know. I believe you didn't understand what he meant." Jennifer nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm working with a state legislator. We're trying to pass a law requiring better threat reporting mechanisms. When someone says something concerning, there needs to be a clear pathway to report it, to have it investigated. If something like that had existed, maybe I would have known what to do. Maybe someone would have intervened." Derek leaned forward. "What kind of law?" "We're calling it Mia's Law." Mia's Law was introduced to the California State Legislature in March 2024, exactly 1 year after Mia's murder. The proposed legislation mandates that residential property managers implement threat assessment protocols, including mandatory reporting of resident-on-resident violence threats, required de-escalation training for on-site staff, and partnerships with local mental health crisis intervention teams. The law requires property management companies to maintain detailed records of resident complaints and to identify patterns of escalating behavior. If a resident accumulates 3 or more complaints involving threats, harassment, or violent behavior within a 12-month period, management must notify local law enforcement and offer the complainants alternative housing options or lease termination without penalty. Critics argued the law places undue burden on property managers and could lead to discriminatory enforcement. Advocates, including Derek Matthews and Mia's parents, argued that lives are worth more than convenience, that prevention is always preferable to prosecution. The bill passed the California State Assembly in June 2024. It passed the Senate in August. Governor signed it into law on September 15, 2024. Mia's Law officially took effect on January 1, 2025. 4 other states, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, and Colorado, are currently considering similar legislation. Advocacy groups have formed in 12 additional states, pushing for adoption of threat assessment protocols in residential housing. Mia's name is being spoken in legislative chambers across the country. Her death is creating systemic change, but none of it brings her back. Derek Matthews lives alone now in a different apartment, in a different city. He can't drive past Parkside Garden Apartments without having a panic attack. He can't hear sudden loud noises without flinching. He's been through 2 years of intensive therapy. He still has nightmares, Mia falling, blood pooling, the sound of gunshots echoing in his ears. His physical recovery took 14 months. 4 surgeries total, physical therapy 3 times a week. He walks with a slight limp now. The bullet that tore through his abdomen damaged nerves that never fully healed. He has scars, visible reminders of the night his life split into before and after. But he's chosen to channel his pain into purpose. In October 2024, what would have been his and Mia's wedding day, Derek launched the Mia Chen Foundation. The organization focuses on 3 pillars: gun violence prevention, domestic violence intervention, and advocacy for victims' families navigating the criminal justice system. The foundation has raised over $400,000 in its first year. They've funded support groups, provided legal assistance to families of homicide victims, and lobbied for stronger gun control legislation. Derek speaks at events now: high schools, community centers, legislative hearings. He shows a photo of Mia, her smile, her eyes full of life and possibility. Then he tells the story, not to sensationalize, not to exploit her memory, but to make people understand that violence doesn't happen in a vacuum. Every mass shooting, every domestic homicide, every isolated incident has a history. Warning signs, red flags that were ignored or missed or dismissed. Mia would still be alive if just one person had connected the dots, he tells audiences. If the property managers had taken the complaints seriously. If the agency had flagged his rejected application when he moved into Mia's building. If his sister had called someone when he said, "I've been waiting for a reason." If any of those things had happened, I'd be married right now. I'd be happy. Mia would be modeling in Paris Fashion Week next month. But nobody connected the dots. And now she's gone. His voice never wavers when he speaks. He's told the story hundreds of times now. But his hands shake when he shows her photo. They always shake. Mia's parents visit her grave every Sunday. The headstone reads, "Mia Chen, beloved daughter, taken too soon, forever 24. They bring fresh flowers, always wildflowers, the kind she wanted at her wedding. They sit on the grass and talk to her, telling her about their week, about the foundation Derek started in her name, about the legislation that bears her name, about the future that should have been hers. Her mother keeps Mia's Instagram active. She posts occasionally. Photos from Mia's modeling portfolio, memories from her childhood, updates about Mia's law. The account has grown to over 200,000 followers now. People from around the world leave comments. Justice for Mia. We won't forget you. Your legacy is changing the world. But her mother would trade every follower, every piece of legislation, every moment of advocacy to have her daughter back. To hear her voice on the phone every morning at 7 a.m., to watch her practice runway walks in the hallway, to attend her wedding, to meet her grandchildren. All the ordinary precious moments that Marcus Webb stole. On the 2nd anniversary of Mia's death, March 15, 2025, over 300 people gathered at Parkside Garden Apartments for a memorial vigil. They stood in the parking lot where she died. They held candles. They said her name. Derek spoke, his voice carried through speakers. A parking space. That's what Mia's life was worth to Marcus Webb. But to everyone who loved her, she was priceless. To the world she was helping through her advocacy, her kindness, her light, she was priceless. And she remains priceless. Every law passed in her name. Every person who learns her story and chooses to intervene when they see warning signs. Every act of kindness inspired by her memory. That's Mia's legacy. That's what Marcus Webb could never take away. The crowd stood in silence for 9 minutes. 1 minute for each year Mia had been modeling, for the career that was just beginning, for the life that was just starting. Parkside Garden Apartments has since installed memorial plaque near the spot where Mia died. It reads, "In memory of Mia Chen. May her light inspire us to choose compassion over conflict. And may her story remind us that every life is precious beyond measure. Marcus Webb sits in his cell at California State Prison. He's 44 years old now. He'll never leave. He rarely speaks to other inmates. He has no visitors. His sister refuses to see him. His other family members have disowned him completely. He spends 23 hours a day in his cell, alone with his thoughts, alone with what he did. In a rare interview conducted by a prison psychologist for a research study on intimate partner and acquaintance violence, Marcus was asked if he feels remorse. His response: "I did what I felt I had to do at the time." When pressed, "Do you understand that Mia Chen was a human being with a family, with dreams, with a future?" Marcus responded, "Everyone dies eventually. I just decided when." The psychologist concluded that Marcus Webb meets the clinical criteria for antisocial personality disorder with narcissistic traits and demonstrates a complete absence of empathy. The report noted, "Subject shows no capacity for remorse, no ability to recognize the humanity of his victims, and a persistent belief that he was justified in his actions. Rehabilitation prospects: none. Public safety risk if ever released: extreme. Marcus Webb will never be released. He will grow old in that cell. He will die there, and the world will not mourn him." Derek keeps a box in his closet. Inside are artifacts of the life he almost had: the wedding invitation mock-ups Mia designed, the save-the-date cards they never sent, her engagement ring, blood-stained, returned to him after being held as evidence. Receipts from Bella Vista restaurant, their last dinner together, the playlist from her phone, Our Forever, which he can't bring himself to listen to but can't delete either. Some days are harder than others. Anniversaries, her birthday, the day they got engaged. Random Tuesdays when he sees a woman with similar hair and his heart stops for a moment before reality crashes back. Therapy helps. The foundation helps. Speaking publicly helps. But nothing fills the Mia-shaped absence in his life. He started dating again, cautiously, carefully, with walls built high around his heart. He tells potential partners about Mia early on. "I need you to know I loved someone who was murdered. I need you to know I carry that with me every day. I need you to know I'll never stop loving her, even while making space to love someone else." Some people can't handle it. They leave. Others stay, understanding that trauma doesn't have an expiration date, that healing isn't linear, that it's possible to honor the past while building a future. On what would have been Mia's 27th birthday, August 3rd, 2025, Derek posted a photo on Instagram. Mia in her white dress, the one she wore on their last night together, before the blood. She's laughing at something off camera, her head thrown back, pure joy captured in pixels. The caption reads, "27 years old today. You should be here. You should be celebrating with your family, with me, with everyone who loves you. You should be walking runways and making the world more beautiful just by existing in it. Instead, I'm visiting your grave. Instead, I'm fighting for laws that might prevent what happened to you from happening to someone else. Instead, I'm living in a world that makes no sense without you in it. But I promise you this: your name will never be forgotten. Your story will save lives. The foundation we built in your memory will help people you'll never meet. Marcus Webb took your future, but he couldn't take your impact. You're changing the world even in death. I wish you didn't have to. I wish you were here, annoying me about wedding centerpieces and arguing about whose turn it is to do dishes. But since I can't have that, I'll settle for making sure you mattered. You do matter. You always will. Happy birthday, my love. I miss you every single day." The post received 47,000 likes, 3,200 comments, hundreds of people sharing their own stories of loss, of violence, of preventable tragedies. The comment section became a digital memorial, a space for collective grief and collective determination to do better. Among the comments, one stood out. It came from a woman named Sarah in Oregon. "My ex-boyfriend has been escalating, threatening me, showing up at my work. I kept thinking it wasn't bad enough to report. Then I read Mia's story. I filed a restraining order today. I contacted a domestic violence hotline. I'm taking it seriously now. Thank you for sharing her story. You might have just saved my life." Derek read that comment 3 times. Then he cried. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere primal. Because that's what this is all about. Not revenge, not closure, but prevention. Making Mia's death mean something. Turning tragedy into transformation. The rabbit hole goes deeper still. Advocacy organizations across the country have adopted Mia's story as a rallying cry for comprehensive threat assessment legislation. The Mia Chen Foundation partnered with Everytown for Gun Safety, the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and the National Center for Victims of Crime to create a national database of escalating threat behaviors. The database, launched in January 2025, allows property managers, employers, schools, and community organizations to report concerning patterns of behavior. The system flags individuals who accumulate multiple reports across different contexts. If someone is threatening coworkers, harassing neighbors, and stalking an ex-partner, those dots now get connected. Mental health crisis intervention teams receive alerts. Law enforcement gets notified. Potential victims receive warnings. Privacy advocates have raised concerns about civil liberties, about the potential for abuse, about the risk of false reports weaponized against innocent people. The Foundation acknowledges these concerns. They've built in safeguards. Reports must be verified, patterns must be established across multiple independent sources, individuals have the right to contest flags, and all data is reviewed by trained professionals before action is taken. But the core principle remains. Mia Chen died because nobody connected the dots. The database exists to connect those dots before the next Mia Chen, before the next tragedy that everyone will look back on and say, the warning signs were there. 12 states have adopted similar systems. 43 universities have implemented threat assessment protocols based on Mia's law framework. Over 200 property management companies nationwide have voluntarily adopted the recommended safety standards, even in states where it's not legally required. Mia's impact ripples outward, touching lives she never knew, preventing deaths that will never make headlines because they never happened. That's the goal. A world where violence is interrupted before it begins, where warning signs are recognized and acted upon, where parking lot arguments don't end in gunfire. But perhaps the most profound change is cultural. Mia's story has entered the collective consciousness in a way few individual cases do. She's become a symbol, not just of gun violence, but of how society fails to protect people even when all the evidence of danger is right there in front of us. High schools show a documentary about Mia's case in classes about conflict resolution and recognizing warning signs of violence. College orientations include segments about her story as part of personal safety education. Community centers host workshops on threat identification and intervention, using Mia's case as the teaching example. Her mother speaks at these events sometimes, standing beside Derek, telling the story from a parent's perspective. No parent should have to bury their child, she says, especially when that death was preventable. Marcus Webb didn't snap. He didn't have a moment of uncontrollable rage. He built toward violence over years, leaving a trail of evidence that everyone dismissed as not that serious. If just one person had taken it seriously, my daughter would be alive. So I'm asking you, I'm begging you, take it seriously. When someone threatens violence, believe them. When someone escalates conflicts over minor issues, recognize the pattern. When someone obsesses over another person, intervene. Don't wait until there's a body. Don't wait until it's too late. The audiences always fall silent. Many cry. Some come up afterward to share their own stories, their own missed warnings, their own what-ifs and if-onlys. The conversations continue long after the formal presentations end, spreading organically through communities, changing how people think about safety and intervention and collective responsibility. You've heard Mia's story. Now you choose. Subscribe and be part of the solution, or scroll away and be part of the problem. Drop a comment. Tell me which one you are. 3 years after Mia's death, Derek returned to Parkside Garden Apartments for the first time since that night. The current property management, new ownership after the lawsuit, had invited him to unveil an expanded memorial. Not just a plaque, but a small garden. Wildflowers, like Mia wanted at her wedding. A bench with her name carved into the wood. A perpetual light that stays illuminated every night. Derek stood in front of the crowd that gathered. Survivors of violence, victims' families, advocates, legislators who championed Mia's law. He looked at the spot where she died. The bloodstains are long gone, scrubbed away, paved over. But he can still see them. He'll always see them. 3 years ago, I lost everything that mattered in 15 seconds, he said. I held the woman I love while she bled out on this pavement. I couldn't save her. I couldn't protect her. I failed at the only thing that mattered in that moment. His voice cracked. He paused, collecting himself. But in the 3 years since, I've learned something. I couldn't save Mia, but maybe, her story can save someone else. Every time someone hears her name and takes a threat seriously. Every time a property manager follows the protocols that didn't exist when we lived here. Every time a restraining order gets filed because someone read about what happened to us and decided not to wait. Every time that happens, Mia's death means something. It's not enough. It'll never be enough. But it's something. He looked at the memorial garden, at the wildflowers swaying in the evening breeze. Mia loved wildflowers because they grow anywhere. In cracks in sidewalks, in places where nothing else can survive. They're resilient. They're beautiful. They persist. And that's what I'm asking all of you to do. Persist. Keep fighting for safety. Keep advocating for prevention. Keep telling Mia's story until the world changes enough that stories like hers stop happening. The crowd applauded. Mia's mother stepped forward and hugged Derek. They stood together in front of the memorial. Two people bound forever by loss, by love, by the determination to make meaning from meaninglessness. As the sun set that evening, casting golden light across the memorial garden, someone placed a single wildflower on Mia's bench. Then another person added one. Then another. Within an hour, the bench was covered. Hundreds of wildflowers, each one representing a life touched by Mia's story, a person committed to the work of prevention, a small act of remembrance and resolve. Marcus Webb will never see this memorial. He'll never know about the garden, about the laws passed in Mia's name, about the lives saved because of her story. He sits in his cell, isolated by his own inability to feel what he destroyed. That's his prison. Not just the concrete and steel, but the profound emptiness where empathy should exist. But Mia's legacy grows. It spreads. It saves lives. A woman in Portland didn't go back to her abusive ex because she read Mia's story and recognized the escalation pattern. A college student in Denver reported a classmate's threatening behavior instead of dismissing it as just words. A property manager in Austin implemented threat assessment protocols after attending a training inspired by Mia's law. These ripples extend outward, invisible but real. Preventing tragedies that will never make the news because they never happened. That's the true measure of Mia's impact, not in headlines or legislation or even in the foundation that bears her name, but in the quiet moments when someone makes a different choice, takes a threat seriously, intervenes before violence erupts. Derek carries a photo of Mia in his wallet. The two of them on a hiking trail the day he proposed. Both of them laughing, the ocean glittering behind them, a moment of pure happiness before everything shattered. He looks at it sometimes when he's struggling, when the grief feels too heavy, when he questions whether any of this advocacy work actually matters. Then he remembers Sarah from Oregon, the woman who filed a restraining order after reading Mia's story. He remembers the 43 universities implementing threat assessment. He remembers the 12 states adopting the database. He remembers the memorial garden full of wildflowers. And he keeps going. For Mia. For everyone who loved her. For everyone who might be saved by her story. Because that's all any of us can do in the face of senseless violence. Persist, like wildflowers growing in the cracks. Find meaning in the meaningless. Turn grief into action. Make sure the people we lost are never forgotten, and that their deaths create the change that might have saved their lives. Mia Chen was 24 years old when Marcus Webb murdered her over a parking space. She should be 27 now. She should be walking runways, planning her future, living the life she'd worked so hard to build. She should be here. But she's not. And we can't change that. All we can do is make sure her absence matters. Make sure her name becomes synonymous with prevention, with intervention, with taking threats seriously before they become tragedies. Subscribe to channels that tell these stories. Share them. Make noise. Because silence is what killers count on. Drop a comment right now. Tell me you won't let Mia's story fade into silence. Tell me you'll be the person who intervenes next time. Tell me you choose to be part of the solution. The choice is yours. What will you choose?